think it was around 280 or so. Sir Gawain, the Green Knight shows up. And he's issued the challenge. He said this is a game. Okay? He said very clearly, you will graciously grant me the game that I ask for by right. Line 274. All right? Arthur replies, hey man, if you want to combat without armor, that's fine. He's like, listen, you dolt. No, I seek no battle. Why? You're a bunch of prepubescent boys here compared to me. Okay, Arthur's sitting there, Lancelot is sitting there, Galahad is sitting there, Gawain is sitting there, Bors, Bedivere. None of these guys in any of the Arthurian literature are quote unquote, my terminology, prepubescent boys. These are all big, brawny, quote unquote, manly men. These are warriors. And he's just thrown that down. Okay? He says, no, here's what we're going to do. I ask of the court 283, a Christmas game. That is, this is part of the revels of the 12 days of Christmas. Okay? Arthur, thought, we were told, he wanted to see a marvel or hear a tale of a marvelous tale or see some kind of jousting in the hall. In any of those instances, did Arthur want/expect anybody to die? No. When the Arthurian knights joust for fun, none of it is to the death. Okay? So it's a game. Notice, I'm beating that horse dead. For it is Yule and New Year, and here are brave men in plenty. If anyone in this hall thinks himself bold enough, so doughty in body, reckless in mind, reckless. What do we mean by the word reckless? Reckless driving. Careless. Okay? Reckless literally means the word wreck. We still have every now and then, if you use the word reckon. Like to reckon something. I reckon. Don't hear it very often. Heard it on British radio this morning driving in, oddly enough, because it's kind of Western. I mean, American Western, not... What's it mean? To think, to consider, to meditate on almost. So, doughty in body and reckless, considerationless, thoughtless in mind. That is, not giving a you-know-what. As to strike a blow fearlessly and take one in return. So, anyone want to take a whack at me? But I get to do the same to you. I shall give him this marvelous battle axe as a gift. And he pulls the axe probably from behind his back. And you can use my own axe against me. Okay? I'll stand the first blow. So notice, he's laying out the parameters of the game. I'll stand here, I'll bend over, you can use my great big battle axe, take your best shot. If anyone is fierce enough to take up my challenge, run to me quickly, seize this weapon, I renounce all claim to it, let him keep it at his own. I shall stand his blow unflinching on the floor, provided you assign me the right to deal such a one in return. Okay? But how's the whole thing been prefaced? This is a game. But I won't grant you the strike in return immediately. Nope. 12 months and a day, year and a day. You meet me a year and a day. Okay? Come on. Anybody ready? If he petrified them at first, even stiller were then all the courtiers in that place, the great and the small. Why?
Big Green Knight just came in and said, hey, take your best shot, I'll give you one in return. And it's like, okay, that's terrifying. We'll probably die.
Probably, and they're probably trying to figure out, first of all, what's the catch? If I give him my best shot, with his axe, and we're going to be told later on, I think the blade of the axe is something like 4.5 feet long.
Oh my God.
Because the axe the axe blade looks like this. Or possibly like this. 4 feet from there to there, or from there to there. Either way you look at it, that's a stinking big axe. 4 feet, that's about 4 feet. It'd be immensely heavy too. So there's got to be a catch, right? What? Is this Arthur's house? That everyone talks of, line 309, in so many kingdoms? Where are now your arrogance and your victories? Notice, not where are now your pride. What's the difference between pride and arrogance? Which is worse? Let me put it that way. Arrogance. Arrogance is worse. Arrogance is higher than pride. Why? It's okay to take pride in your work. Arrogance means you make the assumption based on your pride. I'm the best. The GOAT. Greatest of all time, so to speak. Where are now your arrogance and your victories, your fierceness and wrath, and your great speeches? It's like he's been reading Arthurian literature. You can go and read some Arthurian stuff and listen to Lancelot. The guy is not known for his modesty. Now is the revel and the renown. Now the revelry and repute. I was reading the left-hand column. In repute to the round table are overthrown with a word. My words have done what? Made you cowards. For you all cower in fear before a blow has been struck. And then he laughs, so that the king takes offense. And I think, even though we're not told, again, he's on his horse, and I think he's looking right at Arthur when he just starts laughing. Okay? Arthur grows red with rage, as all the others did. The king, by nature bold, approached the man and said, "What you demand is absurd." Why? What's the absurdity of it?
The fact that it's a game.
Okay, keep going.
How crazy this game is.
Why? Why is it a crazy game? Arthur's logically thinking about this, right?
I don't want to. Why would you put yourself up to be killed, basically, is what he's saying.
If we get the first blow, any one of us here, what are we going to do? We're going to take our best shot. That is, we're going to lop your head off. How are you then going to return the blow within a year and a day? See, that's the absurd part of it. But since you have asked for folly, foolishness, that you deserve. No man known to me fears your boastful words. Hand over your battle axe in God's name, and I'll grant you the wish you requested. So, Arthur gets the axe. He swings it by the haft, we're told. Then proudly, the Green Knight dismounts, gets ready to walk up. Okay? And we're told, then bowed the good Gawain, skipping a few lines, 340. I beg you in plain words to let this task be mine. He bows to Arthur. Said Gawain to the king, if you would, noble lord, bid me rise from my seat and stand at your side. Why doesn't he just get up and go to him? Because Arthur's king. He's just a knight. He has to get permission. Courtesy. This is all part of the courtesy of the court. Okay? If without courtesy I might leave the table and that my liege lady were not displeased, I would offer you counsel before your royal court. Notice, he emphasizes courtesy. With your leave, in Guinevere's leave, I will get up and I will come give you advice before the noble court. That is, so that everybody can hear. For it seems to me unfitting, if the truth be admitted, when so arrogant a crest is put forward in hall, even if you are desirous to undertake it yourself. While so many brave men sit about you in their places, who I think are unrivaled in temper of mind and without equal as warriors on fields of battle. Arthur, this isn't your fight, Gawain is saying. You should give this glory to somebody else, because what is Gawain, I think, thinking? Whoever takes it up is going to win. They're going to kill the knight. This isn't, you should let somebody else get this fame, okay? So, any of the other knights here, but then Gawain gets to his real point. I am the weakest of them, that is the knights in this court. I know, and the dullest minded. So, I'm physically the weakest of all the knights here, and I'm the mentally slowest. He's like, he's running Forrest Gump. So my death would be least lost if truth should be told. Let me do it. Why? Camelot will not be the less if I die. What's Gawain or Gawain showing here? What's he demonstrating? Or at least stating? Humility. Is he really physically the least? No, he's not. We're going to be told later on in the poem. Is he mentally the slowest, the dullest? No, he's not. We're going to be told in the poem. Okay? So is this false humility? Because false humility is an aspect of pride. Oddly enough. Only because you are my uncle am I to be praised. Now that may be true. No virtue I know in myself but your blood. And since this affair is so foolish and unfitting for you, why, even Arthur said, this is absurd. Arthur should not engage in absurdities. He says, and I've asked you for it first, it should fall to me. Right? And the king says, it's yours. Have at it. So, notice the advice Arthur gives him. 372. Take care, nephew, that you strike one blow. And if you deal it right, truly I believe you will wait a long time for his stroke in return. How long?
Forever.
Yeah. If you hit him right, what's Arthur suggesting without explicitly saying it? Chop his head off. Okay?
Is that righteousness?
Yeah, probably is. I don't know that I've ever heard licentees applied to Middle English literature as much as it does to Old. It probably does. But I mean, yeah, it's definitely understatement. Okay? So Gawain approaches the Green Knight, and the Green Knight says, whoa, 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 whoa. Slow down there, hot stuff. Let's go over the agreement again. First I entreat you, what's your name? We got to get the contract right. You'll tell me that. Sir Gawain says, I'm called Gawain, who deals you this blow, whatever happens after. On this day next year to accept another from you with what weapon you choose and from no other person on earth. Why with what weapon you choose? Because the axe is going to be mine. And he says, as I live, I am extremely glad this blow is yours. Would he have said the same thing if it were Lancelot or Galahad? We don't know. The implication is that the Green Knight wants it to be Sir Gawain. Okay? So, he goes on. I am pleased that I shall get from your hands what I have asked for here, and you have fully repeated in exact terms, without omission, the whole covenant I put to the king. Except that you shall assure me, sir, on your word, You will seek me yourself wherever you think I may be found upon earth to accept such payment as you deal me today before this noble gathering. Okay? So you got to agree, you yourself will come to receive a return blow. Where? Send me your address, put it in my contacts, and I'll show up, Sir Gallen says. I don't know where you live. By him who made me, swearing by God. Nor do I know you, sir, nor your count, nor your court, nor your name. Who are you? You've asked my name. I'm Sir Gawain. What's your name? What's the name of your court? Kind of implies that this guy's a master of his own home, in a sense. Okay? Tell me truly these things and what you're called, and I shall use all my wits to get myself there. And he goes, no, we can settle that later. Take your blow, then I'll tell you who I am and where I may be found. If I answer you truly, line 406, the Green Knight says, after taking the blow and you have dexterously struck me, I will tell you at once of my house, my home, my proper name. Then you can pay me a visit. I love that translation. You know, y'all can just come on by and we'll have some tea on the front porch. You can pay me a visit and keep your pledged word. If I don't say anything, then you will fare better. Notice the Green Knight introduces what for the first time?
The possibility he might lose.
Lose how? Die. The possibility he may never speak again. Okay? For you may stay in your country and seek no further. But come on, take up your weapon. Let's see how you smite. And Sir Gawain says, okay. And it's almost like he pulls a sharpening stone out of his pocket because we're told whetting the metal bit. He, whets the stone and starts to just put a nice, fine, honed edge on it. The Green Knight takes up his position, bows his head a little, uncovers the flesh, then pulls his hair up, pulls his shirt back, exposes the skin. Notice what he's doing. Here's where I want you to strike me. He's giving him a target. He's not doing this, okay? His long, lovely hair swept over his head, blah, blah, blah. And Sir Gawain grasps the axe and lifts it high, and we're told setting his left foot before him on the ground. What does that little detail, setting his left foot before him on the ground, tell us about Sir Gawain? He's right-handed. He's going to swing that axe, this hand, I can't do it anymore, this hand's going to come way back, so that when he swings, the hand will come down to where the left hand is, at the bottom of the axe handle. Why? You get more force. And he's planting that left foot because he's going to swing this way. How hard does he swing? He swings the axe so hard that not only does it take off the Green Knight's head, but the blade, we're told, 426, so that the shining steel blade bit into the floor. Now the floor isn't dirt. The floor is stone. He sticks it into the stone floor. The handsome head flew from the neck to the ground. Many courtiers, okay, it's under the table, and they're sitting there kicking it like it's a soccer ball. Yet the man neither staggered nor fell. That is, his body's like this. And then it stands up and reaches around, finds the head, picks it up, strides to the horse, seizes the bridle, mounts the horse, turns the body around. Line 442, many were struck by fear when all his words were said. Like they weren't struck by fear when the body stood up and started reaching around for where the head was. For he holds up the head of his hand, truly turns its face towards the nobles on the dais, and it lifted its eyelids and glared with wide eyes. Remember, year and a day. Search me truly, sir. make your way to the Green Chapel. Such a blow as you have dealt rightfully given, to be readily returned on New Year's Day. Knight of the Green Chapel, I am widely known. Therefore, come or merit the name of craven coward. Gets on his horse, or turns the horse around, and they ride out. Although inwardly, we're told, line 467, Arthur was deeply astonished. He let no sign of this appear, but loudly remarked to the beautiful queen with courteous speech, Dear lady, let nothing distress you today. Such strange goings on are fitting at Christmas. Why? Why are such strange goings on fitting at Christmas? What's Christmas? The incarnation. The God of the universe becomes a little baby, becomes contained in an 8-pound piece of flesh. Nothing's more strange than that. In other words, strangeness, strange things and wonders. Okay? Putting on interludes, laughing and singing, mixed with courtly dances of ladies and knights, nonetheless, now I can eat. I'm hungry. Right? He's certainly seen something marvelous. He glances at Sir Gawain, says, hang your axe up, for it has severed enough. That is, you don't need to cut anything else, where everyone can look at it. And the poet says, now take good care, 486, Gawain, lest fear hold you back from leaving on the quest you have sworn to undertake. Be careful. Don't let fear stop you. Fear of what? Water? Death. A return blow. In other words, you will receive such a blow as you give. What should Sir Gawain have done? Just not looking at all forward. Tap him. Just tap him with it. If it's blow for blow, then, according to the logic of the game, what should the Green Knight do? Mighty swing, tap. But that's not what Sir Gawain does.
But if he had done that, would he have been seen as a coward?
It's a good question. Don't know. Bear in mind, what is the entire context for this? It's a game.
It could have been seen in good fun.
How are games supposed to end? Other than, see, our idea of game has been destroyed, and partly because of Suzanne Collins, the Hunger Games. Because those games don't end nicely, right? If you're one of the tribunes or tributes. Okay? Part 2. Year goes by. The poet talks about, Christmas comes through. And then after Christmas came line 502, mean-spirited Lent. Does that mean Lent, the season of fasting and preparation for Easter, is mean to people? It's not what it means. Mean-spirited means denying the Spirit. Debasing the Spirit. Why? Because Lent is supposed to be a time of preparation for crucifixion with Christ. It is supposed to be this period of self-introspection leading to, I'm trying to think how to put this, true self-loathing. The kind of self-loathing David talks about in Psalm 50:51, depending on your version of the Psalms, where he cries out for great mercy from God because of everything he has done. Create in me a clean heart, renew a right spirit within me. Why? Because David writes that psalm after he's approached by Nathan the prophet, who says, I know what you did. And David admits everything. Okay? So, Lent goes, Lent comes and goes. Summer comes. Summer comes and goes, autumn comes. What else is coming? Time's getting close. He has a year and a day to meet the Green Knight. Okay? Autumn comes. All Saints' Day, 5:35. When is All Saints' Day? It's November 1st. It's also called All Hallows Day. What comes before it? All Hallows Eve, Halloween. Okay? And on the eve of All Hallows Day, the church celebrates, the church prepares for the Day of All Saints. If you're a Harry Potter fan, what happens on All Hallows Eve, Halloween? It's when Harry's parents are murdered and when Harry is cursed by Lord Voldemort. The very next day is when Harry is discovered alive. And in the novels, Professor McGonagall says, this day will be known as Harry Potter Day. All Saints Day. Later in the novels, Harry gets called Saint Potter. Okay? There's a lot of religious imagery and symbolism throughout the Harry Potter novels. Rowling was a classics and medieval major. So, All Hallows Day comes. And Arthur made a feast on that day to honor Sir Gawain. With much splendid revelry at the round table, the most courteous of knights, blah, 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 blah. They what? They're mourning for Sir Gawain because they know, mourning, M-O-U-R-N-I-G, because they know he's got to leave soon. Notice, none of them knows where the Green Chapel is. None of them has ever heard of the Knight of the Green Chapel, even though he said, I'm widely known. Okay? So, 5:45, Sir Gawain goes to Arthur. Time for me to leave. Tomorrow, without fail, I set out for the blow to seek this man in green as God will direct me. Tomorrow, November 2nd. He has 2 months then. Because the blow was struck on New Year's. So it's the day after New Year's, a year and a day, okay, that he will get the return blow. And we're told, he says, tomorrow without fail I set out for the blow to seek this man in green as God will direct me. God will tell me where I'm going. The nobles all gather in the court. We get a bunch of them mentioned. Yvain and Eric, Dodemal, the Duke of Clarence, Lancelot and Lionel, Bors and Bedivere, etc., etc. They give him advice. Okay. He stays there all of All Hallows Day. And then he gets outfitted with his armor and everything. And the poet goes into great detail. Why? Because it adds to the story? Nope. Doesn't add to the story at all. It's meant to please the audience. Because they are people who would like this detail. Because it describes them. It describes how they normally dress. Okay? Braces on his arms, and we get the arming of Sir Gawain. And that's one of the ways the poem can be dated. Armor, medieval armor, can be dated literally by the decade because of changing in fashion. If you see A Knight's Tale, there's a scene when Heath Ledger's character is fighting in a joust, and the character who is his main rival looks at him and says, you know, where'd you get your armor? Because he mentions it's out of date because it has this shield-like thing here. It's old. It's like 40 or 50 years out of date. Why? Because he stole it, Heath Ledger's character, from his dead master, who got it when he was a young knight, or younger knight. And he was in his early 60s or late 50s when he died. Okay? So, we get a long description of his armoring. We get a description of his horse Gringolet's armor and such. And then we're told, then they bring in his shield, line 619. Then they brought out the shield of shining jewels. The G's pronounced with the J sound. With the pentangle painted on it in pure gold. Pentangle, 5-pointed star, like that. Okay? He swings it over his baldric, throws it around his neck where it suited the knight extremely well. Why the pentangle should befit that noble prince, I intend to explain, even should that delay me. A little bit of meta discourse there, right? I mean, okay, so I'm going to talk about this thing, even though it doesn't advance my tale. And the poet gives a long description of the pentangle and what it represents. Interestingly enough, after this description of the pentangle, it's never referred to again. It's one of the most enigmatic things in all of medieval, if not all of English literature. Why spend such great detail and then it gets dropped? So, it is a symbol that Solomon designed long ago as an emblem of fidelity. So we're told it emblematizes fidelity. What's fidelity? Latin word fides. Grace, faith. Sorry, not grace, faith. It means faithfulness, okay? Or loyalty, you could say. It is a figure consisting of 5 points where each line overlaps and locks into another. So it's kind of like this, where there's almost like a loop there, where you can see the lines intersect, rather than just points touching, okay? And the whole design is continuous, and in England is called everywhere, I am told, the endless knot. There is no other place where this thing is called an endless knot. It's the only place in English literature. Okay? The endless knot, by the way, is what's called a triskelion. It's got like 3 lobes, and they intersect. It's an image of the Trinity. St. Patrick famously used it to describe the Trinity. Therefore, it suits this knight in his shining arms, for always faithful in 5 ways, and 5 times in each case, Gawain was reputed as virtuous. Okay. 5 ways, 5 times. So you're going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way down to 5. The 5 fives is what they're referred to. Okay? So he's faithful in 5 ways, and in each of these ways there are 5 characteristics. Right? So, Gawain was reputed as virtuous, like refined gold, devoid of all vice, and with all courtly virtues adorned. First, so the first of the 5 fives, right? He was judged perfect in his 5 senses. Next, so perfect in his 5 senses. What are the 5 senses? Sight, hearing. I do that all the time. I'm like Bottom in Midsummer Night's Dream. Sight, hearing, taste, smell, touch. Okay? So he's perfect in all of those. It's like he's never looked at something he shouldn't look at. He's never tasted something he shouldn't taste. He's never touched something, etc. Okay? Next, his 5 fingers, meaning each hand. He doesn't only have like 2 on one hand and 3 on the other. His 5 fingers never lost their dexterity. He hasn't had carpal tunnel syndrome, you know. in his earthly, so that's the second 5, right? Dexterity, 5 fingers each hand. The third 5 was his earthly faith in the 5 wounds that Christ suffered on the cross. What are the 5 wounds? Crown of thorns, hands, feet, side. Okay? Lost my place. And wherever this man found himself in battle, his fixed thought was that above all other things, all his fortitude should come from the 5 joys that the mild Queen of Heaven found in her child. Those 5 joys that Mary found in Christ. So the 5th 5. Again, there are 5 points to it. What are the 5 points? We're coming up on, in the church calendar, a feast this weekend. Anybody know what it is? It's always in Lent. Feast of the Annunciation. Gabriel comes to Mary. Why is it coming up this week? March 25th. 9 months. December 25th. Okay? So, the Annunciation, that's the first joy of Christ that Mary has, because it's her first awareness of him. The second one, the Incarnation, because like most women, probably by about 9 months, she was ready to get rid of that, you know. The third, his first baby steps, you know, first word, no. Depending on how you spell it, crucifixion. Fourth, resurrection. And the 5th one, these aren't, by the way, these aren't unique to the Goyim poet. There's this list that shows up in other works in the Middle Ages. The 5th one, there are 2 possibilities. Can be, if I can remember how to spell it, the ascension, because after Christ is crucified, resurrected on the 3rd day, 40 days later, he ascends into heaven. Okay? Or what's called the Dormition, or the Assumption. When Mary died, according to early literature of the church, not in the Bible itself, when Mary died, her body was assumed into heaven. That's the Assumption. The Dormition is the Eastern terminology for this. It's the falling asleep of Mary, her death. Okay? That's on August 15th. So these are the 5 joys. Sorry, that's the 4th 5. The 5th 5, when he glanced at his heart, it never, for this reason the gracious knight had Mary's image on her shield. Sorry, that's the 4th of the 5. The 5th of the 5s, the man respected I here with his generosity and love of fellow men above all. So if we had the 5th one, let's say this is the 5th one, okay? The first of the 5th, lost my place again, 652, generosity, okay? Number 2, love of fellow men. Man, my eyes are playing games with me today. Purity is 3. Number 4, where'd it go? Good grief. Courtesy. And lastly, compassion. What's compassion? Because compassion kind of sounds like love of fellow men. Compassion isn't the same as love.
forgiveness in some senses. Like,
Could be.
empathy?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
What does it literally mean? Co-passion. Co-suffering. Suffering with, identifying with other men. If you remember, last week when I had written up here stuff about chivalry and I had mentioned, the Pentecost oath. All that stuff about the Pentecost oath coming from what I suggest is being based on Christ's words about the final judgment, the parable of the final judgment in Matthew 25. Okay? And he says, inasmuch as you've done this, and this, to the least of these, my brethren, you've done it, what? Unto me. That is almost the literal definition of compassion. When you were in prison, I was with you. When you were hungry, I was with you. When you were thirsty, I was with you. When you were naked, I was with you. And if somebody gave you food when you were hungry, they gave it to me. If they gave you drink, they gave it to me. If they gave you clothing, suffering with, in other words. Okay? So, you've got all these 5 points. And notice, they're all linked. You can't look at one and separate it from the others. Because what happens if you do? You pull that thread, use a term from literary criticism, and it all deconstructs. It all falls apart. Okay? So we're told, now truly all these 5 groups, line 656, were embedded in that night. So the shield is doing what, according to the poet, the speaker? The shield is merely, to use the example, the word that was used, the shield is an exemplum of Sir Gawain's character. Now, an exemplum is a literary type by itself. Preachers use exempla, plural, in their sermons, in their homilies. What are they? They're examples. They're stories. That's what a parable is. A parable is a story to demonstrate a moral or theological point, but often, at least in Jesus' parables, the moral or the theological point isn't clear, except to those who have eyes to, got to get this right, I almost said eyes to hear. Unless you have eyes to hear and ears to see, and you're bottom from A Midsummer Night's Dream. Oh, man. Because if you go back and read the Gospels, what often happens after Jesus tells a parable, the disciples go, we don't get it. And he's like, to you it's given to know, and he'll go on and explain those parables. Okay? If we were reading all of the Canterbury Tales, we would get exempla from several of the tales, because several of the tales are kind of sermons. The Nun's Priest Tale is very much a sermon. Okay? Wife of Bastille, not so much, though there is an element of the exemplum in there. So, based upon the 5 points that was never finished, not uniting, now truly all these 5 groups, line 656, were embodied in the night, each one linked to the others in an endless design based upon 5 points that was never unfinished, not uniting in one line nor separating either, without ending anywhere at any point that I find, no matter where the line began or ran to an end. Therefore, the knot was fashioned on his bright shield, royally with red gold upon red jewels. Jewels, if I remember right, are slashes. I'm probably wrong about there. That is called the true pentangle by learned people who know. There's no other reference to a pentangle in English medieval literature. This is the only one. And the poet kind of implies, oh, everybody knows what a pentangle is. I mean, they're all over the place. They're not. You turn this upside down, and what does it become? Paganism. pentagram. Okay? But that's not what this is. Pentagrams are referred to in other places. So, he's on his horse. He's got his shield. Mary is on the inside of the shield so that he can just kind of hold it up, and there she is, and he can look at her and be fortified by faith in her 5 joys, etc. And on the outside is this star. He gets on his horse. He rides off. And meanwhile, back at Camelot, people say, line 674, "What a pity indeed that your life must be squandered, noble as you are." I don't know, but I kind of wonder if that's what, what's his name? The guy who wrote Princess Bride had in the back of his mind when Miracle Max says to the others, have fun storming the castle. They're going to lose, aren't they? Okay. Where do they think he's riding off to? To find his equal on earth is not easy in faith. Top of page 244, line 676, I think it is. To have acted more cautiously would have been much wiser. How could he have acted more cautiously? Kept his head down and shut up, or tap, and have appointed that dear man to become a duke, to be a brilliant leader of men as he is well suited. And would better have been so than battered to nothing. Now, notice the language the poet is using. What does it sound like is going to happen? If this were Beowulf, what would we be told at this point? He's going to die. He's going to fight the dragon, because we're told about 1,000 lines before. Oh yeah, Beowulf's going to fight the dragon. They're both going to die. And you're like, no, I don't need to read to the end. Beheaded by an ogreish man out of excessive pride. Is he beheaded out of excessive pride? That is it the ogreish man who has excessive pride? Or is it Sir Gawain's excessive pride? Whoever knew a king to take such foolish advice as knights offer in arguments about Christmas games? I've been teaching this for 20 years. I've literally never talked about those 4 lines because it just struck me. The poet, we're not even a fourth of the way through? Pretty close to a fourth of the way through. And the poet has just given something key away. What should have Arthur / Camelot? What should have been their response to the Green Knights challenge? No, we're not going to play your silly game. It's a silly game, right? Why do they? Why does Arthur stand up? Why is he red-faced when he stands up?
He's been insulted. It's his ego.
His pride was wounded. You wound someone's pride, especially a warrior, and what have you just done?
Destroyed sense of self.
Okay, what else?
Started to have a feud.
There's a phrase. If you aim for the king, what? Kill the king. Because if you only wound the king, you're screwed. If you go after the lion, or the tiger, or the bear, you better kill it. Because you don't want an angry lion, tiger, or bear coming after you. You wound an animal, that animal becomes more dangerous because of that. Whoever knew a king to take such foolish, notice, advice as knights offer in arguments about Christmas games? Well, who offered an argument about a Christmas game? Sir Gawain did. I'm the least of your knights, I'm the dumbest of your knights, blah, 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 blah. A great deal of warm water trickled from eyes when that elegant lord, in other words, everybody was shedding tears because they're thinking he's a goner. Okay? So, 691, Sir Gawain rides through the realm of England, we're told. Though he found it no pleasure. He doesn't have any fun on this journey. He doesn't talk to anyone but God on the way. He goes to the very north part of Wales, near the Isles of Anglesey. That's the uttermost northern part. Okay? Anglesey are just off the northwest coast of Wales. Holyhead is referred to right after that. If you take it's one of the departure points that you can take a ferry from England/Wales to Ireland. You can catch a ferry at Holyhead, it'll take you across. And came ashore again in the wilderness of Wirral. That is still an area called Wirral, W-I-R-R-A-L, in Wales today. There a few people lived, whom either God or good-hearted men could love. Always as he rode, he asked those whom he met, so you seen a Green Knight? You heard of the Green Chapel? Nobody knows anything. Okay? What does he encounter while he goes? Bears, boars, bulls. Not quite, I don't understand that one, other than alliteration. Okay? Wild men, line 721. Some wild with woes that wanted in the Canaries, sometimes with wild men who dwelt among the crags. I wish the translator had not used with, W-I-T-H, for the Middle English W-Y-T-H. Because the Middle English W-Y-T-H harkens back to the Old English meaning of W-I or Y, ev or thorn, meaning against. He fought against wild men. Okay? The woes. These are the woes that we see in J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. Just before in, what is it? It's either Two Towers or Fellowship of the, or Return of the King, is the men of the Rohirrim, it's Return of the King, men of the Rohirrim are making their way to Gondor. Theoden and others meet up with Gon-Buri Gon. Tolkien gets the name for those men, the Woes men, from this. And again, Tolkien edited this in the 1920s. His edition is still used widely. So he fights what? Line 720. He fights dragons, he fights wolves, he fights wild men at the crags, he fights with bulls and bears and boars and ogres. Okay? Had he not been valiant and resolute, trusting in God, he surely would have died or been killed many times. Okay? Keeps going on, line 734. The knight rides across the land until Christmas Eve alone. Meaning he's alone the entire time. And it's Christmas Eve now. Earnestly Gawain then prayed Mary that she send him guidance to some place where he might lodging find. Holy Mary, Mother of God, give me aid, give me direction. Over a hill in the morning, in splendor he rides into a dense forest wondrously wild. So what morning is it? Now it's Christmas Day. Okay? He rides over a hill into a wood, massive oaks, moss everywhere. Okay? And what happens? We're told 748. The knight on Gringolet, the name of his horse, hurries under the trees through many a morass and swamp, a solitary figure, troubled about his plight, lest he should be unable to attend Mass, church service. For that Lord who on that same night was born of a maiden, our suffering to end. Okay? It's Christmas Day. He's riding along. Unless the overhill in the morning is meant to go back to Christmas Eve. The lines have been read both ways. That this is Christmas Eve that this is happening, or that it's Christmas Day. Anyways, I think it's Christmas Eve still. Anyways, he's thinking, I got to go to church somewhere. Why? He wants to receive the Eucharist, the holy offering at the service of Mass. Who was born, for that Lord who on that same night was born of a maiden, our suffering to end. What was the suffering caused by? Adam's and Eve's fall in the garden. And therefore sighing, he prayed, I beg of you, Lord, and Mary, who is gentlest mother so dear, for some lodging where I might devoutly hear Mass and your matins tomorrow, Christmas morning, I think is what that means. Humbly I ask. And to this end promptly repeat my Pater and Ave in Creed. Pater, the Pater Nostra, our Father who art in heaven, the Lord's Prayer. Ave, Ave Maria, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. Gabriel's words to Mary at the Annunciation. And the Creed, reciting, I believe in one God, the Father Almighty, maker, and goes through and recites the Creed. Why? Those are all part of one's personal devotion in amidst other prayers. That is, you say those prayers, at the very least. Next page. Bewailing his misdeeds. Why? Why is he bewailing his misdeeds? What's meant by his misdeeds? And bewailing. Sorrowful contrition for his sins. Look at the Lord's Prayer. Forgive us our, depending upon the translation, trespasses, debts, sins, as we forgive those who trespass, owe us, sin against us, etc. Notice in the Lord's Prayer, there's nothing about, happiness, wealth, prosperity, etc. In praying as he wrote, he often crossed himself crying, prosper me. That is, he did not say, make me rich. The phrase Godspeed, anybody know what that means? It doesn't mean literally, God, give me speed. Not the kind you drop or the pedal to the metal speed.
Is it like God be with you, God walk with you?
God make me successful in this endeavor, in this whatever it is I'm attempting. It's God be with you, okay? Hardly had he crossed himself 3 times. Why cross himself 3 times? Father, Son, Holy Spirit. What happens? He sees through the trees. He got sight through the trees of a moated building. Okay, here's a question for you. Was the building there before he crossed himself 3 times? Or does it just kind of whoop, magically appear? In other words, if one of us were to follow the route that's very sketchily sketched out, would we find this building? No. First of all, why? Because the story's not real. Why else? I think it's because of Sir Gawain's faith. There's a scene in C.S. Lewis's last novel, Till We Have Faces, where a character is on one side of a stream and it's heavily influenced by, I think, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight and the Pearl Poem. The character is leaning down on her knees at a stream. It's early in the morning, it's kind of misty, and she drinks water from the stream. She's on her knees. She looks up, and where before all she saw was woods and forest on the other side, now she sees the most amazing castle. Turrets and walls and pinnacles and everything. Okay? But she's on her knees. Once she stands up, disappears from her sight. Why? Anise is emblematic of what? Notice. The words are related. Humility. Standing up, taking control. The mind rises, it asserts itself. That can't be real. It's just fog and trees. I thought I saw something. Did she really? So, Sir Gawain sees through the trees his castle. He rides up to it. Bangs on the door. The porter comes, answers the door. Okay. Notice we're told Sir Gawain rides to it, 778. He graciously takes off his helmet. Well, let me back up. We get this long description of the castle, well, fairly long description of the castle, and we're told that side, line 771, that side of the castle Sir Gawain surveyed as it shimmered and shone through the fine oaks, or shone. The shimmering, that's kind of like, I think, the way I read it, it's taking solidity. Okay? And Sir Gawain graciously takes off his helmet and devoutly thanks Jesus and St. Julian. Why did he take his helmet off? St. Paul says that when you offer your prayers, you should have your head uncovered. If you're a man, a woman should have her head covered. And he says something there about the hair on a woman is the glory of the angels or something. I don't remember what the passage is exactly. Okay? Jesus and St. Julian. Julian, patron saint of hospitality. He said, thank you, Jesus, and St. Julian for having this place like Motel 6 show up miraculously right here. Bangs on the door. The porter comes. And Sir Gawain asks, line 811, will you carry my message to the master of this house to ask for lodging? Yes, by St. Peter. Why by St. Peter? What does, according to Catholic doctrine, what does Peter hold?
Keys to the gate of heaven.
Keys to the kingdom of heaven. He's a porter. He's the door opener. The porter is a door opener. That's why he swears by Peter. Okay? He goes speedily, quickly returns. Notice, very similar to Beowulf, right? Beowulf goes to Wulfgar. Wulfgar is the door warden. He says, tell me who you are. Beowulf does. Wulfgar goes in, tells Hrothgar, comes back out, you can come in. So that's what this guy does. By the way, these doors in these castles, the porter's gate, etc., go to Oxford, and you'll see the same kind of thing at all of the colleges. They're little tiny doors. You have to bend down to go inside them. And probably even for the stature of a medieval person, they were short. Why? Because bending down indicates humility to go inside and become under the care, if it's a home, of this other person, etc. If it's a university, you are bending down, showing, I don't know everything yet. And you're learning, or you're going to learn, hopefully. So, he comes back, he welcomes them in. Okay? They stable his horse. Sir Gawain's let in, he takes his helmet off. He meets the men of the hall, etc. And page 248. Fit 3, 255. And the lord of that company, line 833, comes down from his chamber to show Sir Gawain his respect, and says to him, 835, these are important lines, you are welcome to do as you please with everything here. All is yours, to have and command as you wish. Why does he offer everything there to have and command as he wishes? That's about the greatest hospitality you could wish for, right? It's not just come on in, you can use one of our spare bedrooms. It's come on in, whatever you see, enjoy it. What does that include? Whoever you see, enjoy it. Sir Gowan says, thanks. Christ repay your noblesse. Noblesse, that's a word we've not seen before. What's meant by it?
It's kind of like, the way I've seen it used is like noblesse oblige,
Noblesse oblige.
which is the duty of a noble to their people.
Okay? So this is referring to knightly, noble virtue. Thank you, or may Christ repay your virtuous behavior. That is, you've shown virtue to me, may Christ do the same to you. They hug each other. Sir Gawain studies the man, thinks him bold, big sucker too. A great sized knight indeed. Yeah. But he doesn't put two and two together. Why?
Is he really the dullest of the knights?
Because he ain't green, though. Broad, glossy was his beard, reddish brown, stern face, standing firmly, powerful legs, face fierce as fire, noble in speech. Truly seemed capable, it seemed to Gawain, of being master of a castle with outstanding knights. The Lord leads him to a chamber, quickly orders a man to be assigned to him. That is, he has his servant now, Sir Gawain does. Several attendants ready at his command. He's taken to a fine bedroom, marvelous bedding, curtains of pure silk. I don't think I've ever seen in any castle that I've been to in Britain, even in places like Hampton Court Palace, which was Henry VIII's palace after he stole it from Cardinal Wolsey, a four-poster bed with curtains made of silk. Okay, the reason they have curtains around these beds is castles are notoriously drafty. They're cold. Silk, is that going to keep the cold out very well? No, but it sure does look good. Okay? So the audience is probably going, wow. And the ladies are probably nudging their husbands. How come we don't have silk around our bed, you know? So, they've got ermine on top. There's that ermine, that's kind of royalty. Sir Gawain strips, he puts on comfortable clothes, he gets a chair in front of the fire, he gets wine, he gets food, etc. We're going to skip a bunch again. People tactfully, we're told, line 901, question and ask him by discreet inquiry who he is. They don't just come out and say, so what's your name? Rank, serial number, the whole 9 yards. So that he must politely admit he belonged to the court which noble Arthur, that gracious man, rules alone. And that it was Gawain himself who was sitting there, having arrived there at Christmas, as his fortune chanced. And when the lord of the castle hears, we're told he laughed loudly at the news, so deeply was he pleased. And all the men in the castle were overjoyed to make the acquaintance quickly then. Note, 9:12. Of the man to whom all excellence and valor belongs, whose refined manners are everywhere praised, and whose fame exceeds any other person's on earth. Now that's not Sir Gawain talking about himself. That's what others say about him. He is the model, the exemplar, the exemplum of excellence, valor, manners. And the knights whisper to each other, now we shall enjoy seeing displays of good manners and the irreproachable terms of noble speech. Why are they so interested in Sir Gawain's manners in speech. Where are they? The middle of nowhere. I mean, they're out in, if you're Paris, Woodbury. Okay, I mean, that's stark. The art of conversation we can learn unasked. How can they learn it? Just by listening to them. The art of conversation. That is, the art of knowing how to talk. Kind of implies, I think, that they're talking not just about, word choice and things like that, but pronunciation possibly even. What else? Since we have taken in the source of good breeding, whose birth men, truly God has been gracious to us indeed in allowing us to receive such a guest as Gawain, whose birth men will happily sit down and celebrate in song. What day is it? It's Christmas. Whose birth are they celebrating? Singing in song. Christmas carols. Christ. And now they're saying men will happily sing and celebrate Sir Gawain's birth. A little dangerous there. That's kind of like you go back to ancient Greek literature, Greek drama and such, and people start praising somebody and equating him or her with the gods. Every time in Greek literature that happens, you know what happens? That person gets brought down. That person has his knees knocked out from under him. You will bow whether you want to or not. You will admit you are not a god. You are not the source of, let me use this language, all good breeding. So they're praising Sir Gawain up one side and down the other. Whether they're doing it to his face or not doesn't matter. Okay? So, the Lord and Lady make their way to the chapel where Sir Gawain also goes after dinner. And we're told he enters a finely carved pew, the Lord and the Lady do. Sir Gawain hastens there, smartly dressed. In other words, looking nice, dressed to the nines. He thanks them, the two men embrace. Line 940, and they sat gravely together while the service lasted. Why did they sit gravely? Because this is a serious church. This isn't, a modern American Protestant service. Get up, go out to the coffee bar, talk with a few people. Come. This is, you're worshiping the Lord and Savior. Okay? You're serious here. Then the lady wished to set eyes on the knight and left her pew with many fair women. The implication is she's not sitting with her Lord. The implication is the women are over here and the men are over here. She was the loveliest on earth in complexion and features, in figure, in coloring and behavior, above all. Kind of sounds like whom that we've read about before. Lonval's lady lover, exactly. No, not Guinevere, by the way. And more beautiful than Guinevere, it seemed to the knight. She came through the chancel to greet him courteously, another lady leading her by the left hand. So, beautiful, drop-dead, knockout, gorgeous woman, being led by another woman, we're told, by the left hand. Question: whose left hand? Is it the woman leading, holding out her left hand, leading the drop-dead gorgeous one? Or is it the drop-dead gorgeous one with her left hand out and thus being kind of led by the other person by the right hand? Because you wouldn't necessarily lead left hand to left hand. Chained, okay? One is off to the side of the other slightly. I think it's important which of those is which. Why? What's Latin for left? Anyone know? Sinister. sinistre. What does sinister mean? It doesn't mean just wrong. It's evil. Okay? Who is this other lady? Who was older than she, that is, the one doing the leading, is older than the drop-dead gorgeous knockout. An aged one, it seemed, respectfully treated by the assembled knights, but very different in looks were these two ladies. And then the poet's going to emphasize the difference in appearance. For where the young one was fresh, the other was withered. Fresh probably implies 20s. Great complexion. The other one, the description we're going to get, this is not an exaggeration, I don't think. You know what a Shar-Pei dog looks like? Get on Google. It's a dog with all kinds of wrinkles in its skin. That's what the old lady looks like. Okay?
I love Shar-Pei. They're so cute.
They're cute. They have all kinds of skin problems because of the wrinkles. Every part of that one was rosily aglow. That is, the one being led. On that other, the one doing the leading, rough, wrinkled cheeks hung in folds. Not one fold, multiple folds. Okay? Many bright pearls adorned the kerchiefs of one, whose breast and white throat, uncovered and bare, shone more dazzling than snow new fallen on hills. I don't mean that means she's walking around with her breasts hanging out, but it's a low-cut gown. The other wore a gorget over her neck. The very word gorget refers to one's gorge, the neck. Why? Because it's the gully, like a gorge, that food goes down. Gully, gullet, they're related. So, her swarthy chin, wrapped in chalk white veils. What does swarthy mean?
Darker complexion.
Why would her chin be dark?
Whiskers maybe?
That's it. Who famously in folk and fairy tales, what kind of women have whiskers often? Hags, ogresses, witches. Okay? Her swarthy chin wrapped in chalk white veils, her forehead enfolded in silk, muffled up everywhere, with embroidered hymns and lattice work of tiny stitching, so that nothing was exposed of her but her black brows. Eyebrows, probably. Her two eyes, her nose, her naked lips were repulsive to see, and shockingly bleared. A noble lady indeed, might you call her, by God. With body squat and thick and buttocks bulging broad. More delectable in looks was the lady whom she led. I just love the bob and wheel there. Because it's, it gives this long description of the old one doing the leading and going, but I like the one that she's leading a lot more. Okay? Sir Gawain glanced at that beauty, the young one, who favored him with a look, and taking leave of the Lord, he walked towards them. The older one, notice, he salutes with a deep bow. Why? Respect your elders. Plus, what are we told all the knights do? We were told she was treated respectfully by the assembled knights. Now, when we get to the end of the poem, we're going to find out why she's treated respectfully. Who is this? The old woman is Morgan Le Fay. Celtic literature, a goddess, but also called in some medieval literature, a witch, a hag. She can put spells on you. Yeah, you're going to treat her respectfully. Okay? So he bows to her and takes the lovelier one briefly into his arms, kisses her respectfully, and courteously speaks. Now, I don't know what takes her respectfully into his arms means. Does that mean he goes up and gently puts his hands on her shoulders and pulls her in? Is this a European kiss, kiss, kiss? Or is this and plants one on her? Respectfully. No tongue, you know. Again, I would love to see a Monty Python. Oh, just about all medieval literature, I would love to see Monty Python. They outdid themselves with Holy Grail. They asked to make his acquaintance. He says, I'm your servant if it would please them. Why? I had written up here, chivalry in courtly love. That's part of both. In the feudal society, a knight was vassal to his lord and to his lord's lady. So he's showing his vassalage. In the courtly love tradition, you throw yourself at the lady's feet and mercy. You offer to be their servant. And notice, if that would please them, they place him between them and lead him, still chatting, to a private room, to the fireplace, and they call for cakes, etc., etc. Okay? And we will stop there, and we'll pick up with 995 on, let's see, Thursday. Quiz due Friday, I think it is, over 1 and 2. So we'll finish 2, definitely. We'll get into 3. So if you haven't finished, finish her down in the Green Knight. We won't, definitely on Thursday, because we're going to get bogged down in the exchange of winnings and temptation. Well, we won't get too bogged down. There's a slight possibility we can finish. Okay. I am going to, as I said at the beginning, or before class began, I'll either post something on the announcements or send an email about papers, because I'm going to modify the assignment a little bit. I'm going to make it so that your paper doesn't have to only be a formal, quote-unquote, research paper. I'm going to be a bit more flexible in expand possibly options, like a reaction kind of paper, but you have to still be very specific and kind of draw parallels and explain how something has connected, either to you or is connected to something we see around us today. Okay? But I'll try to work that on in my own mind first.